SexyHackers.com.
Once upon a time, there were a few young girls with a passion for literature, a love of the written word, an inspired infatuation of... Okay, fine. We were a bunch of super dorks with no friends. We spent all day hiding out in our rooms, reading books that were maybe a little inappropriate.
Welcome to Who Let Me Read This on Sexy Hackers, the podcast where a panel of funny folks talk about books that we read when we were maybe a little too young or a little inappropriate, and how that has colored our views, changed the way that we live our lives, and cost us far too much money on therapy. Everyone needs therapy.
There's no such thing as
book.
Too much therapy.
Yeah, it really isn't. No.
Also, get an appropriate therapist for yourself. If you are thinking about getting a therapy, please look for an appropriate therapist. Not every therapist is right for every person.
It's kind of like dating, and you have to at least talk
Find
to them
the right
once.
one.
And
Yes. Yeah. We've discussed that should be a shirt. It's just therapy. It's for everyone.
Yes. We are in week 3 of talking about Johnny the Homicidal Maniac by Jhonen Vasquez, the comic series from the late 90s, early 2000s, early aughts. We have the director's cut compilation. We also have the individual issues. And I am joined here. Issues. All the issues.
Many issues.
We brought our own issues.
Yes.
We brought the issues of the book as well as our own issues. I am joined here today by improviser, all-around funny lady, Liv Shircel.
that's me. Also, nice guy. I'm putting
Also nice guy.
not nice. Sorry, all
Nice
around
guy
good
TM.
guy. All around
Nice
good
guy TM.
There's
You
a little
heard
bit of
it
nice
here.
guy-ism in here, so no. Sorry.
Also joined by Andrea Roedel-Schroeder, Rage Queen.
I want that title.
I love that's your title.
Fight me for it. No, you're too ragey.
Such an obvious title, too.
And all the way on the end, Liza Field, officially Liza Field.
Congratulations. Recently.
Funny person who doesn't do anything.
Funny person who doesn't do anything. We can get into that in another podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
JTHM.
We're going to call this week The Plot Appears.
A wild plot appears.
Yeah.
A wild plot appears. So the past couple episodes, we have talked about the tiny thread of a plot that exists in this book, the plot question mark. But this week we really do start to get a little bit more depth. Substance, not depth. Substance in our plot.
Definitely not depth.
a story.
Andrea's going to give us a little a mini summarization, but first I do want to do a quick content warning. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, as its title suggests, is very violent.
What?
A lot of graphic violence against adults, children,
Animals,
bunnies specifically. There is themes of suicide, mental health. There's
Sexual assault.
fat phobia. It's
really a bingo card.
It is. It's it's the blackout round for bingo of like edgy early 2000s. So make sure that you're coming into it in the frame of mind to engage with that.
Yes, absolutely. So to recap, as Sarah might have mentioned and might have been obvious already anyways, Johnny is a homicidal maniac. And we are following Johnny through his journey of killing literally everyone he meets in various interesting, bonkers ways after torturing them at length often. And that's really most of the plot so far is Johnny kills a lot of people. He possibly is maybe immortal and maybe can't get caught for doing the things he's doing, ? It's we'll get into more this section of why that may or may not be true, but it is his perception that he cannot die and cannot be caught.
That was also mine as well.
Yeah. And we meet his neighbor, Squee, who's a little boy who's like neglected and abused. Squee. And Johnny is somehow a positive figure in his life, which is tragic. And we meet Devi, who is the only person in this book so far to have escaped Johnny's clutches of death. And see her dealing with the aftermath of that. And then we get Johnny just trying to commit suicide a bunch of times. And eventually, at the end of our last installment, getting shot with a phone trap.
As you do.
Like he has a gun set up attached to his phone, so if he answers the phone,
It shoots him in the
it
face.
shoots him.
Which they bring up a really good point. One of the pig / Pillsbury Doughboys.
He has imaginary friends.
Yeah. They bring up the point, like, nobody calls you. And it's like,
Yeah.
why would anyone call you? You kill almost everyone you come
Yes.
into contact with. But I had a question
Well,
about
like, think about that.
Squee.
You can't even order a pizza.
No.
That's unfortunate.
Well, to be fair, he doesn't like eating.
That's
Yes.
true.
Like,
Yeah,
he's not
that's
about
right.
Which is
something.
also unfortunate because
Yeah.
eating is awesome.
Yeah, eating
I have
rules.
mixed feelings, but okay. But I have a question about Squee, because in the book, when they're talking about Johnny, they say Johnny likes kids, like,
Yeah.
and not in a creepy way. He's like,
He
I think
genuinely cares about kids. Yeah.
but like, what about when they become adults? Like, he really likes Squee. If you were to meet Squee 10 years from now, would he be like, I have to fucking murder you?
Probably. Yeah. It's a very limited window that you have for Johnny to care about you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That really is it. And it's, we get a bit of that. He rescues Squee from almost being kidnapped and stuff like that. And then, yeah, Debbie tries to call him to see if he's still there, and he gets shot in the face. And now we're where we are.
Yeah.
Just part 5 and 6 of this bonkers ride.
yeah.
And we finally get some plot.
Yay! I deserve it.
I want to mention before we get into
yes.
the plot, because I just love it so much. If you Google it
Yeah.
or whatever, but I love the cover art.
The cover of,
Yeah.
on issue number 5.
Yeah.
Like the cover art on issue number 5, I was like,
it's
this is
very
my
cool.
favorite thing about the series.
Yep.
But it also, like, it has, I assume that Jhonen Vasquez maybe paints these.
I think he does, yeah.
Because it has like the texture, the canvas texture
Mm-hmm.
back in the background, and it is chef's kiss.
Yes.
Yes.
Love it.
Stylistically, this series is very cool to revisit.
Yeah.
We've mentioned that it hurts our old eyes a lot, but it is very cool.
I had to get out my readers.
I need a pair.
So we jump into part 5. We'll be covering part 5 and 6 in this episode. And we get some more of Johnny killing people. And then we get Tess and her boyfriend Dylan, who, now that Johnny has been shot by his phone trap, again, I just have so many questions about the
So
phone trap, you guys.
elaborate.
But they escape, maybe?
They make a run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while this is happening, because this section of the book, we'll talk a lot about, some of us think that this actually happens, and some of us think that this is all just like a hallucination or like a dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we find out that Johnny, who has been claiming this whole time that he has to kill people to paint this wall red and keep it wet to keep something from coming through it, we get to see what that is. And y'all, it's a tentacle monster.
He's also struggling. Like, he has this whole thing of like, he stops painting the wall because he's kind of become a slave to painting the wall, which it's kind of like he didn't want to be a slave to anything, including painting the wall, and he felt like he was a slave to the monster, but the monster didn't want him to paint the wall.
Yeah.
But also he's mentally ill, so he has spiraling conversations that don't
Go anywhere.
logically, yeah.
Gobbledygook.
Yeah.
A lot of this book can be explained in he's mentally ill.
Yeah.
That's really a brief summary of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. He's mentally ill.
Yeah.
Which
and
I don't love as a like characterization of mental illness.
Yeah,
As
it's
like,
rough.
That's a big thing in the media, is that if you're mentally ill, you're going to hurt people.
And that's
Yeah.
not usually what happens, guys.
yeah. You're more likely to be the victim of a crime
Yeah.
than to be
Right.
the perpetrator.
Exactly.
Todd Phillips.
Interesting.
Anyways, moving along. We won't get into that. And so we see Tentacle Monster that maybe exists and maybe doesn't. And Tess and Dylan actually does not make it.
No, Dylan gets killed almost immediately.
Because Dylan
Which, bye.
sucks. Yeah.
Bye, Dylan.
Dylan's garbage.
Yeah.
But her and another victim of knees.
Who's also awful. Like,
Oh, yeah,
also
he's
awful.
also a twat basket.
Yes. They escape, but then the tentacle monster destroys the entire world.
Yeah.
And then we jump to Johnny in heaven.
It destroys the entire world except for Johnny's house.
Yeah.
And Tess, who's still in the house.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about
But
that.
only his house, not the tunnels of torture chambers that he has underneath of it.
Because, of course.
Yeah.
And a torture tunnel?
Torture tunnel.
Torture tunnel.
That's fun to say.
Yeah. And the tentacle monster gets the other guy right as he's trying to get out the door.
Yes.
And that guy was just a big fucking asshole. And
Worst.
it's one of those things where you're like, well, I'm glad Johnny got you, but he could have just killed you.
Yeah, there doesn't need to be all of this torture
But
leading
then
up
Tess
to it.
couldn't have gotten out.
And then there's an interesting, because they give like a flashback to when Johnny met the whoever this guy is.
Yeah, I don't think
almost
he's
makes it out. I don't think he ever gets a name.
And if he
but
does, we don't
part
care
of-
because it sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of this guy's deal is that he saw Johnny, and like we get this picture of what Johnny looked like through his eyes.
Yeah.
And it's
Liza
like
literally
super
opened to
dorky, puny muscles.
Yeah, we get a casual
we get an
Epsler.
Epsler. That's cool.
Oh yeah, that's
like
right.
that he's a big dork. He stands out in a crowd, so he must be ridiculed. Like
Threat to manliness. That's my
threat
favorite
to
one.
manliness. Yes, because he's skinny.
Tag yourself. I'm threat to manliness.
Yeah.
Part of this, so Johnny has died. And we've talked about like, what is real, what is not real, what is real, what is not real. And this picture of like what Johnny looks like to this person is one of those like what is real, what is not real. Is this the way Johnny actually looks to that person, or is this the way Johnny assumes he looks to that person?
Yes, because it's very different from what we see Johnny look like.
Right. And that very much speaks to his insecurities and I think potentially to the author's insecurities and about himself. And like I kept thinking about I watch a lot of Criminal Minds. It's fine.
Don't we all?
There's a quote where someone is talking about their technical analyst, Penelope Garcia, who's too pure for this world. And they say she wears her individuality like a shield.
Yep.
And like reading this, I just like kept popping into my head. Because that very much is like something, this image, like for whatever reason, like crawled into my soul.
And then died there. And
Right. And
now
I
the whole
was
place
like,
stinks.
this is like for me as a teenager, that type of thinking of like this is the way people see me was very much about my own insecurity and my own like lack of self-confidence. And it wasn't about like faking superiority in misanthropy was a reaction to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So like reading this with the benefit of like hindsight,
Yeah, absolutely.
I can definitely see like for whatever reason that specific image like really crawled into my brain as like a snapshot of like this is a huge difference in the way that reading this as a teenager crawls into your brain and reading this as an adult crawls into your brain.
The other thing I like thinking about with this particular piece is that it's from the point of view of this jerk face, because he's describing what happened and he describes him specifically like this to Tess, and then says that he shot laser beams out of his eyes because that's the only way that this weakling could have overcome him. So like I read it more as like this is how this guy pictures him. But also I think that is still so much what Johnny is carrying all the time.
Is the perception of others and basing his entire perception of himself on that like refracted concept.
Man, I was really happy when Dylan died, though. I was really thrilled by that.
Well, and at that point, it was kind of a mercy because Johnny was not cruel to Tess. He kept her in the house, but my understanding is he like fed her. He never tortured her. Don't get me wrong. That's not how you should look for a boyfriend. No. But like he basically was like, you're just here because you were with this guy. But to Dylan would torture him constantly. And like, she would say like, he needs a doctor. And then he was killed. And it was like, okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Like that's better now. I have rats in my anus. More of that shock humor.
Yeah, and that's so much of this section too.
Yeah.
Is we get a journey through his like torture chamber tunnels, and so we get all of the little snapshots of all of the like hyper disgusting stuff that he does to people.
Right. And you realize how huge it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, they can't get out.
Yeah.
Like, there's a comment
Yeah, they keep
that,
climbing and climbing and climbing.
yeah.
Which also could potentially lend to the theory that this is not actually real.
Right.
Yeah.
And that he is just bonkers. But we jump from there to heaven and hell, neither of which want Johnny, because, spoiler alert, Johnny, sorry, you do sort of suck.
The silhouette of the devil, though, definitely reminded me of the tall ones from Invader Zim.
Oh, yeah. There's
Like,
a lot of influence of the
yeah.
art style. And I think we'll touch more upon that after a word from our sponsors, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely.
As I look at the angry yellow numbers.
We have a timer that tells us, hey,
shut up.
take a break. And so we're going to take a quick break for a word from Sexy Hackers, our sponsor here on Who Let Me Read This, sexyhackers.com. Get yourself a t-shirt.
Yes, get yourself this bomber jacket, guys.
Yes.
It's
I'm
bomber
going to
jacket.
wearing
purchase
the
that.
bomber jacket,
It's the
which
bomb.
is beautiful.
It is the bomb.
Hey-oh.
Hey. We'll see you back in just a second.
Bye.
sexyhackers.com.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that word from our sponsor. We are going to jump back into Johnny and the I almost said Johnny and the Homicidal Maniac. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, who has just arrived in heaven.
Yes, he has just arrived in heaven, and he is underwhelmed, as he is with most things.
Right.
God, shockingly, is just sort of a loser. He falls asleep, he doesn't care.
God looks like a baby.
God does look like a baby.
Isn't there like a little thing where he's like upside? Of course, it's upside down.
Of course it is.
It says, "Oh, look at the cute little God."
Yes. God looks like a baby. He doesn't care. He's not interested.
He's tired.
Yeah,
He's like, I created a whole universe. Like,
Yeah,
could you give
yeah.
me time to take a nap?
Well, and I actually
Which
thought about
is
that.
okay.
Because, let's say you make a car and you give it to a family, and the family treats this car like absolute garbage, and then is like, hey, person who made this car, fix it.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, no, don't treat the things I give you like garbage.
God is just over it. in this. Yeah.
God's done.
Also, God has a sweet, insect armchair.
Yes, it's delightful.
It's got, little legs. It's scampering around,
very
and it keeps
praying mantis
shushing
looking.
people.
It's like the inspiration for the Wally chairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we get a lot of heaven being very in
Boring.
keeping with his thing too. Also, just sort of weird and dirty and strange.
Yeah.
At first.
Yeah, St. Peter vomits because Johnny tells him about all of his craziness, or he reads about
He's
Johnny's
reading about it,
He's
yeah.
reading about
Book.
Johnny's craziness. And then we get the demon who is the tour guide for heaven.
I like that.
Yeah.
She is
I
rad.
feel like
She's a trip.
I feel like I would have had
Feelings?
gay feelings I
Yes.
didn't understand about her.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
For sure.
Definitely for Davi.
Yeah. So he takes a tour of heaven. He finds out that the whole jam in heaven is that if you think about it, you can explode people's heads.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they just don't want anything because they don't need to want anything.
Yeah, so they're just sort of, we get another weird commentary on laziness and lack of passion.
Yeah.
was
What's
gonna
that
say,
song?
I disagree,
Heaven is a
though.
place where nothing ever happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Johnny promptly starts exploding people's heads, as you do.
And then they all get super aggro, which I just kind of love.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just everybody's exploding
Yep. Everybody
head.
starts exploding.
It's a domino
heads.
effect. Like
Yep.
if one person steps out of line. So are you telling me that heaven's a dystopia?
What? And then a nun explodes everyone's heads all at the same time, which I
Yes.
do kind of love.
And then Johnny goes to hell, where he's probably belonged this whole time.
Yeah.
Which hell basically just is Earth again.
Yeah.
But
and
people
so-
are more fixated on things.
Yeah. Everything's a little bit elevated.
Yeah,
I
he
also-
Things
definitely-
still cost money in hell. I'm just saying
Yes.
hell is a capitalist society.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
That checks out.
Yes. The devil looks very cool.
How do we know we're not in hell right now?
Well, that's a
mean, we are.
theory that I've heard. A theory that I've heard is that when Adam and Eve ate, or when Eve ate the apple,
Yeah.
we're like in the Garden of Eden after the fact.
Religion is bonkers, you guys.
Yeah, like I had heard that and I was like, and then I thought about it for a while, and then I was like, that's dumb.
And then you had to go outside and like drink some wine, maybe.
Stupid.
No, I'm more cyber about it, where I'm like, no, I'm an NPC and I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hero is. Please don't murder me and then reload.
Yes.
Also, I loved Satan as a cheerleader.
Yes.
I love that he's like, I just
God.
needed to unsettle you, but like, speaking of feelings you didn't know you were going to have about women, that was me with this cheerleader. Just being like, especially because the book is so dark and misanthropic.
Yeah.
And then him being there and being like, hi. I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
Give
it
me
was
some
like-
pep.
Yeah, and you see a lot of that too. That verges into his Invader Zim series. There's a lot of like unexpected like cheerfulness.
Oh my God.
What-
Gur. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines in this entire series. Where did it go? I lost it. Wait, I think I wrote it down.
They all look a lot like.
I know, I can't find the page because...
Because it's just a blur of.
Oh, there it is. Hell makes a yummy bagel.
Oh, yes.
Apparently the bagels are really good there.
Yeah.
Which I love.
I believe it.
I like when the devil's like, please address me by my proper distinguished title, Senor Diablo. And he's like, will Mr. Satan do? He's like, yeah, okay. Like, it's just so, that's
Yes.
Invader Zim to me right there.
Yeah, we do see a lot of that. Like hell is unexpectedly kind of like cute. It's,
Yeah.
it's a
I wasn't
It's a
wasn't
bit of a
against it.
reprieve.
It actually seemed nicer than heaven.
yeah. And I think that's probably on purpose. But in hell, we get really all of the rest of the plot before we just throw it right in the trash can and move on.
Right.
Which is that the reason that Johnny is, or was for a while, unable to die or be caught was because he is what is delightfully termed a flusher. And a flusher is somebody who is responsible for taking all of the, like, essentially the bad juju of, like, the human world and, like, getting it out of our dimension and into another dimension to keep things from that dimension from, like, getting into ours.
Related to that and related to hell, I like how he runs into someone who's like, you murdered me.
Yes.
It's like, oh, well, and kicks him out of the car.
The guy who murders him gives him a lift, and
Yeah.
then Johnny ends up kicking him out of the car.
Yeah. And it's like we get a bunch of fun hell, and then we get the weird. Can we not call them flushers, guys?
Yeah, that's weird.
It comes back to his whole obsession with like filth
and himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so that is why he has to paint the wall. That's his job, is to take the garbage of humanity, i.e. the trashy people that he kills, and paint it on this wall as a barrier to keep other things from coming through. And now that he's dead, that hasn't happened. Tentacle monster, yada, yada, yada.
They're
But he
going to
wasn't
reboot
dead.
the Earth.
He wasn't dead for that long. I think part of it was that he's like, I don't want to paint the wall anymore. But also part of it is he wasn't distinguishing. And I mean, you could say this was because of the evil monster. He was being compelled to kill people who weren't evil. So he wasn't really just
Doing
taking
his job,
bad
yeah.
juju. He was just taking everything,
Yeah.
and only the bad juju would keep it out.
He was literally throwing everything at the wall.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's if you believe that actually happened,
Yes.
which I don't.
Right.
Yes.
I believe he's just a bad
That
person.
is very interesting because, and I think probably we'll touch on it briefly in the next episode as well, is we get all of this plot. This whole section, 5 and 6, are like plot.
Best
plot,
part,
plot,
best part of the
plot.
whole series.
Yeah.
And then at the
100%.
end, we very abruptly were like, okay, we're going to reboot it. The tentacle monster destroyed the world. We'll just start fresh. And then it ends. And then,
Which to me seems like that is an ending
That should
to
have
the
ended.
series.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like that to me
exactly.
feels like an ending to the series. He gets rebooted and he's like, okay.
Yep.
Is he still a flusher? I feel like he's not.
Presumably.
No, well, presumably he is, because that's why he was able to live.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like they sent him back to continue doing the work to undo
Right.
tentacle monsterness.
I like
And
his
he
antennae
comes back.
hair.
Yeah, he comes back with just 2 like antennas of hair.
Yes. I
Because
love
apparently
it.
all the rest of it got like blasted off by him getting shot.
Which he was warned
No.
about by Cheerleader Devil.
Yeah,
Yes.
Cheerleader Devil says when you come back to life, it's excruciatingly painful and you lose all your hair.
Oh, I just forgot that was a thing I read.
Yep.
It all blurs
But
together.
the very end of the issue of the it's issue 6.
Yes.
part 6.
Yep.
Right? The very, very end of it is, Dear Diary, I've been to heaven and hell, and I still don't know if there is a God or a devil. Still, it's something to write about.
Yeah.
Sure is.
And that's like the end. And I like that to me would be like kind of a nice ending. Like he's come back and it's up to you to decide whether the whole cycle continues or he makes a change, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, it's something to write about is totally like the theme of all of my diaries
Oh,
from
yeah.
age 10 till 18.
100%. Yep.
So, and now related to that, that is my question, I think, for this segment, because we get a lot of glimpses into this too. So obviously I've mentioned that I read this at a deeply inappropriate age. But what was everybody's first like brush with like really dark, like violent media? Because this wasn't mine. I was already a weirdo. I remember like the thing that stands out to me personally is I watched Carrie with my mom after bugging her for like a week because we had seen it in the paper that it was going to be on TV, and I was like, that sounds really cool, Mom.
I love that you saw it in the paper. Please keep going.
Yeah. And she was like, no, that movie's way too dark. We can't watch that. It's really like, it's violent. It's very intense. Like there's a lot of
Talks about periods and you're just not old enough.
like there's a lot of adult themes. And I was like, well, Mom, but it's on TV. So like, it's going to be.
Oh yeah, the edited version.
Yeah. And so we watched Carrie together. And that was, until that point, I was not allowed to watch PG-13 rated movies without like them screening them and checking first.
Yeah.
I cried because my brother got to go see Jurassic Park in theaters and I couldn't because it was PG-13 and I wasn't 13. And so that was like the floodgates opened as my mom and I watched Carrie, and I think she clocked that, like, as I've mentioned, I was blessed with at a young age the intuition to be able to know, like, this is fiction. And it doesn't relate to my real life, and maybe I have some angsty feelings, but like I didn't have nightmares after watching scary movies and stuff like that. And so then from there, I conned my grandmother into renting Scream for me.
You can't even appreciate it. You haven't seen enough horror yet.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it was just all downhill from there. And I know that that's not the usual trajectory based on how many friends I got in trouble for watching movies with them.
Oh, yeah.
So I love to hear stories of like, what was everybody's first thing with that? Of like, when were you first like, I probably shouldn't be watching this
Blue
or reading
Velvet.
this?
Wow. Okay.
I love David Lynch.
You jumped both feet.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I loved Twin Peaks. Saw Fire Walk with Me after I watched the series, and then I was like, gotta know who this guy is more, and then watched Blue Velvet, and I was like, I think I should revisit this at an appropriate age.
We'll come back to this.
Yeah, we will. And then
Who let me watch this?
right. And why am I watching this? But yeah, Blue Velvet for sure was definitely like my four-way, like my going down the like rabbit hole, so to speak, of dark think pieces, I guess. And then just like fun horror movies in general. Cannibal Holocaust I saw at an early age, which effed me up to no end. I was like, did this really happen? But like it didn't. So
They did unfortunately actually kill a turtle.
they did unfortunately kill a turtle. R.I.P. turtle.
Poor turtle.
Yeah.
He's with Nail Bunny now.
He's with Nail Bunny for sure.
So he's hanging out with Johnny.
Yeah.
I have two because it was kind of around the age of like 12 to 13 because I was very censored as a kid. I was saying I wasn't allowed to watch Animaniacs because they were disrespectful to adults.
Interesting.
You and Laura need to talk.
I did. I told her about that this morning. But the first thing that it's between these two. Watching Train Spotting with my mom.
Oh man.
Wow. Okay.
So we both were in love with Ewan McGregor, and we watched this movie, and she's like, I don't think you should have watched that. And I'm like,
amazing.
check. And the other one, and this is the one that stands out because I read it, and my mom found out after, and it was one of those times where I read it, and as I was reading it, like, oh, I shouldn't be reading this. Gesturing, reading through the entire book. And that was Wicked because I liked the musical.
Oh, yeah.
I know we've talked about, not on the podcast, but like maybe that would be a podcast because Wicked starts with like incest and like a lot of sexual themes,
Just
not
some
like the
casual
musical. And that was a big one of like, oh, okay. So that's not violent so much as just like, I bet if I read that now, it would make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense.
To briefly
Yikes.
piggyback, one of my other ones was actually something late night. We had the movie channels, and my mom and I watched a movie called Shallow Grave that has Ewan McGregor.
That freaking movie.
That movie's so good.
Yes.
You guys, go watch Shallow Grave.
Oh.
It's
I'm
on the
going to
Criterion
now.
Collection now. It's very good. I
It
definitely
is.
watched it like shortly after we watched Carrie and was like, I should probably not be seeing this.
But he was so cute.
He was so cute.
He's always
dreamy.
cute.
And
And
that
was
was
cute in Birds of Prey.
Yes.
Yes, and that was my introduction to further violence and murder, and also just like weird British movies.
And I'm not a horror movie person. I have a lot of anxiety watching movies. So like horror movies, I don't go to horror movies in the theater if I can avoid it. And even like watching them at home, I'll like turn it off and go make food or whatever. Like and my sister and I are similar on this, where she called me from the lobby of Black Swan. She was like, I had to leave.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
I was too anxious. I couldn't handle it. I had
That
to leave.
isn't a nail biter.
Fucking
movie.
Darren Aronofsky.
We saw my parents bought Jurassic Park on VHS when it came out, and we were 7, and so 6 or 7. And so watched it, and then my sister had nightmares for 3 nights in a row, and the VHS tape like disappeared. It magically disappeared, and then reappeared when we were like 17.
Nice.
And my parents swear that they did not do that, but I was like, then where did it go?
Dinosaurs took it while you were sleeping.
While we were
The
sleeping.
Velociraptors. They're smart.
Right. Well, and I didn't watch a lot of like dark media that much. I read a lot of like books with heavy themes. I read like books about the Holocaust and books about slavery.
yeah.
Wow.
Like when
So
I was
many
10
books about
years old,
Holocaust.
when I was 10 years old, I was like, I'm reading Roots. And I did. And it's very violent and very graphic, but it's like historical.
Yeah.
And nobody checks
Right.
that.
No.
Yeah.
You know? And so I was like reading books that were heavy themes, and my dad is a big Shakespeare guy. So I think really like probably the most violent thing of my childhood was actually Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, where there's like big battle scenes, and it is fairly graphic for like a movie. And I saw that also around when it came out, so I was probably like 5 or 6.
Wow.
But the things that I watched that were violent or inappropriate were often couched in that like important literature or history.
Yeah.
Which in some ways is almost more terrifying because it's like, these are real
real,
things that actually happen.
Yeah, you can't have the layer of dissociation.
Yeah. So
And then-
I'm not a horror movie person because the heightened tension. Like,
Yes.
oh man,
What horror movies are all about.
Chernobyl fucked me up.
Oh yeah.
I watched every movie, every episode of Chernobyl with like my entire body like curled in on itself on the couch. Like I want to know what happens, but I'm so stressed out right now.
It is a stressful experience.
I haven't watched that one yet, simply
neither.
because I know it'll make me anxious.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Very stressful.
Is it? I thought it was based on Chernobyl.
It is.
It is. Yeah.
See, I really want to see that.
It's really good. It's just very stressful.
Yes.
And one
With the
caveat
benefit
before
of
we end,
hindsight, it's very stressful.
horror movies, I didn't start watching them until I was an adult because I love movies and I love cinema.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that are entrenched in horror. That's just fantastic cinema in horror. And I was so mad that in order to get to that, I had to watch a scary movie.
Yeah.
So now
I
I'm
don't
more
like
desensitized.
Being
Yeah.
scared.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus Santa's
right.
there and he'll protect me.
Right.
At least as a barrier while I run. I mean, I'll wait for you.
And we'll wait for you till next week. Thank you for listening to Who Let Me Read This. Like and subscribe. If
Watch
you
Chernobyl.
have been reading,
Chernobyl.
if you've been reading Johnny the Homicidal Maniac along with us, we definitely want to know what you thought about it in the comments.
I'm so sorry. Let's talk.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Let's talk. We are going to be back next week with one more episode of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. After that, we will be reading The Face on the Milk Carton by Caroline B. Cooney. Join us for that one as well. We release episodes every Wednesday on the Sexy Hackers channel, sexyhackers.com. Get yourself a sweet t-shirt.
Yes.
Thank you to them for providing us this sweet space, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Sexyhackers.com Stream Team.